Melanie Naismith here, and this is Sounds Like Us. Today's guest is musician, entertainer, and author Peter Klein, aka Captain Pete. Sounds Like Us is a community artist project brought to you by Working for Victoria and Taung Shire Council. The aim of this series is to shine a light on creatives that have been influenced by the Taung Shire and to share a brief snapshot of their journey within the arts. So we're very lucky to have two people on for the price of one today. We've got Captain Pete and just Peter Klein. But I know you or know of you as Captain Pete. So that's how I get my reference points. Everyone goes, have you heard Captain Pete? Have you heard Captain Pete? So he's sort of a big deal around the Bathanga area, I would say. So that Baringa Peninsula area of the Taung Shire. And for people that are just listening, can you just tell us a little bit about how you got into what you're doing now? Just a little bit of a background.
It's a long and winding road, that one. I started out working as a dye chemist at Macquarie Textiles back in the day. And when things were starting to go a bit pear-shaped in the textile industry, I somehow found myself working for a microbiological company, working for a gentleman called Sandy Montague, and I started making fungus for him, which was pretty interesting. And that was an incredible journey that went for about 7 years, and it was a fungus called Metarhizium, which ended up being a microbiological to control grasshoppers and locusts. And so I've got a bit of a sciencey background, and it did very well. And a product called Green Guard was made, and it was being used by the Plague Locust Commission to spray locusts and stuff like that. So that was pretty exciting, except things changed there in the journey of it all. It was bought out by an American company and we got closed down, and I felt pretty devastated. It was like, barracking for Fitzroy Footy Club, that suddenly my journey was finished and I had all this passion and all this joy about making a difference to the world. It was really important to me to try and make the world a better, safe place for our kids and for grandkids and for the future, and make an environmentally friendly product to control grasshoppers and locusts was really important to me. So when that finished, I was kind of left in a bit of a limbo land, ended up heading out into the vineyards just to prune because it was a job I could do without having to worry about stuff, and just happily pruning away. And I met a gentleman called Leon de Montigny. I told Leon I had all these ideas for stories. So if I backtrack a little bit, I took my two boys, Sam and Todd, when they were little. They were about 5 and 6 years old. We went for a little trip in the combi van, Gus, the combi van, and we drove up to Hervey Bay. We had no rules. We had no plans. It was just head north in the combi. Whenever the boys said, "Are we there yet?" I just went, "Sure." And I'd look to the right and head for the nearest beach, and we'd just pull up and we'd eat food and have some drinks and light a fire and have a shower, have a swim, whatever we wanted to do. And it was great. It was really, really cool. So during that trip, my youngest son started singing a song which included the word mud poo. And I sort of looked at him and I said, "What did you just say?" And he had no idea. He just said, "I don't know, Dad." And I said, "You were singing something. What was that?" And he goes, "I don't know, Dad." And then the next time he did it, I pulled over and wrote the word down, mud poo, put it in the glove box of the car. And a combi glove box is quite an interesting place, I can tell you. And it fell down in the back of the glove box and I forgot about it. So now I'll go forward a little bit. After the trip, we had a fabulous trip. We met humpback whales leaping out of the water.
Oh, wow.
Extraordinary thing that we saw around Hervey Bay. It was amazing. There were lots of great adventures. We went to Iluka. We explored the last littoral rainforest in New South Wales. So that's the rainforest that grows on sand. The rest have been sand mined and all that. We learned a lot on that journey. It was great for the kids and we had a ball. And Gus, the combi van, learned how to talk on that trip too. It had its own personality. So when I got home from that trip, I wrote everything down and it got into a bit of a notebook sort of thing. So now I'll go fast forward again to working in the vineyard with Leon. And Leon was this incredible guy who, he's just a really nice guy actually, and he lived in Albury, and I'm going to the vineyard at Rutherglen Estates driving from Bathanga. And Leon just said to me, "Pete, can I get a ride to work with you?" He said, "I'm happy to pay, we'll give you $100 a week or something for a ride to work." I said, "Don't be silly." I said, let's just say you come along with me and I'll drop you off wherever you want to get dropped off. I'll pick you up wherever you want to get picked up. And so we just had a bit of a chat on the way to the vineyard. And I told him the story about mud poo and how what I'd done was I'd written our story. Sam and Todd and I, we became characters in this story. So I became the Captain Pete character and Todd became the mud poo character, who was a young boy. And Sam became Harry the dog because before we left on our adventure, Harry the dog had been accidentally sort of run over and it was a bit of a trauma. But he lived on as Harry the dog in the story. And so when we did this journey to Hervey Bay, there it all was in story form. And of course, it had all been forgotten. About 10 years later, here I am working the vineyard after doing all the work with the fungus and stuff. Here I am in the vineyard with Leon, giving him a ride to work, telling him all these amazing stories about mud poo and all the things we got up to and seeing the whales leap out of the water and all these true stories. And Leon said, Pete, I'm really grateful for this ride to work you give me every day. It's really cool. He said, I've done something for you. And he gave me this little sketch. When I saw it, I'm driving along, I nearly run off the road. It was incredible. And that sketch is the front cover of the first book, The True Adventures of Mud Poo.
Oh.
And it was me with Harry the dog and Mud Poo and the whale in the background. I couldn't believe it. And he just said he was so grateful that I never asked for anything. He was drawing me a sketch every week. I had a new sketch and I'd be yakking away about the mud poo stories and all the little adventures we had. There's 10 adventures in the first book and they all fell onto the page. It was just like a bit of a ramble out of my head, remembering what we'd done. This was all 10 years ago, all on a sketchy notepad. And I'm telling Leon all this and he's drawing the pictures as he visualises what I've been trying to explain to him. And so we ended up with a whole heap of pictures. And of course, then Leon and I kind of started talking about, gee, maybe I can make this into a book. These are great. And that's what happened. We self-published our own book. Leon was more than happy to provide all the pictures, and I said, "Hey, Leon, when we get this book published and all the rest of it, we'll go, halves in the profits we make." And then I had to tell him later on. I said, "Well, we've done a great job. I've self-published 200 books, and they've all sold. The profit's about $1 because by the time you take out the printing costs and the publishing costs, and then the bookshop wants to get their share, pretty much break even."
It's passion projects like that, aren't they?
It is a passion project. But we were really thrilled that we got our book out there. And eventually we got picked up by a publisher, and that was an interesting journey as well. And the publisher, we really got into it, and I wrote 3 more books, and Leon did all the pictures for it, and we worked together as a team, and that was really cool. And that's kind of during that journey, I ended up going to uni because I lost my job as a guy making fungus, for working for Sandy, and we were working for fairly interesting microbiological companies, making more than fungus, but we made a bacillus product which could control mould growing in hay and really interesting stuff. So I really enjoyed that with a passion, but no longer doing that in the vineyard. While I was in the vineyard, thinking, thought, I'll become a school teacher. So I started studying school teaching and found myself becoming a teacher. I worked for High Water Theatre. I worked for the Fruit Fly Circus School, just teaching literacy, mathematics, sometimes science. But then I got stuck into the creative stuff, which was doing the creative arts, which was for me was creative music. And ended up at Belvoir School, and we created a band with all the special needs kids, and they almost won Battle of the Bands. It was unheard of.
Oh, wow.
Just their love and their passion, and they recorded a CD and did all that. So that was pretty amazing. So I went down the school journey then as a creative music teacher, which I love, and I work now at Telgano Bathanga School, and also I do some work with Wise Owl Psychology, working as a MSL teacher, which helps kids with dyslexia, which is a really rewarding job, because you're really getting connected with the kids, their needs, for their literacy work, and also with the parents and the family. The whole family benefits when a young person who's got some dyslexia problems can actually get some mileage and start reading and writing and kicking some really good goals. So that's quite an exciting thing to be involved in.
So with that, you're obviously very invested in the future of
Absolutely.
Children. And your latest book is called Mud Poo and the Secret of the Rainforest. Now, there's a message behind that. And now that I've just heard your backstory, this comes from your scientific type fungus days, does it a little bit? Like there's a bit of a linkage in there. Can you tell us about this book and why it's so important?
Absolutely. there was a few things. Leon and I, and this is Leon's last book, and sadly Leon passed away. He died from an illness and had cancer, and we lost him in 2016. But we talked about this story, and he was drawing the illustrations while I was just talking to him about what I was thinking and mind mapping the story. And we came up with Mudpoo and the Secret of the Rainforest. The essence of the story is that our rainforests are being destroyed to make way for oil palm trees, and the oil palm is being used in supermarkets. It's in, well, not just supermarkets, but it's in products we buy in supermarkets, products we buy everywhere. So there's oil palm, and it's not sustainable. There is such a thing as certified sustainable palm oil, which is okay to use when it's in products because they're plantations that haven't been used from destroyed rainforests. So the Melbourne Zoo has a Don't Palm Us Off campaign. So I made a bit of a connection with the Melbourne Zoo and their orangutan enclosure, where they have Don't Palm Us Off. They're trying to preserve the orangutans in Sumatra, in the rainforests. They're trying to help the Sumatran tiger to survive, and they're invested in it very heavily to try and stop palm oil plantations from being destroyed. But there's an awareness of we need to know that when we purchase our products, that we're not actually purchasing things that was using palm oil that came from destroyed rainforest areas. So we need to go into certified sustainable rainforest areas. So the message in the book's very strong in that direction, but there's more. There's lots more. There's lots of layers in the story. One of the critical aspects that we worry about so much is climate change and how things that we do in our day-to-day lives can affect the climate. And one of the things when I was working as a microbiologist and working in this crazy factory where we kind of had the license to try and invent things, we worked on a product called Bacillus aminio liquefaciens, which is an endospore, which we use to treat hay, and that actually the treated hay would stop growing mould. And it was also tested by, I think it was the University of Queensland, who found that it helped calves to stop them from scouring. It gave extra weight to sheep. So when sheep ate it's a bit like eating yogurt. It was good for their gut. It it worked like a probiotic. So it's really good for the animals, and there was so many benefits to the bacillus. And it was a very interesting product, being an endospore too. It's a very unique product, and we had to work out the production process and how to make it. So in this story, and getting back to the story, when I was writing the book and I was no longer working for this company, I just had this idea when I was writing Mudpoo and the Secret of the Rainforest, how cool would it be if the characters in the story found a treasure chest with a formula that allowed them to make the bacillus, which then they find out that Captain Pete, the crazy inventor in the story, feeds to cows and works out it stops them from farting and burping methane. But the truth of the matter is that cows actually, they don't fart methane. It just sounds great. I know it was mentioned in Parliament. They were talking about burping and farting cows, and you can't stop that from happening. Well, I've got news for Michael McCormack. Yes, you can stop cows from farting and burping methane. Well, we believe that could happen. So the truth of the story was, it was a kid's story with a little twist in it, but that twist is it's like the art has followed the science, or the science has followed the art, because I contacted Queensland Uni, and I contacted Professor Dart, who was doing a lot of the research on the bacillus, and I said, how did you go? And he explained to me about the benefits and how it can reduce mould in hay. So we'll stop hay shed fires. It will stop, it will help, the probiotic will help sheep to have extra growth and all that kind of stuff. But the crucial thing was, will it stop cows from burping methane? As I put it in my story. Just made that up because I thought it might be a nice twist in the story. And he said, well, Pete, you won't believe that, but we're going to follow that research up. We're going to actually put cows in glass houses and let them burp and let them do their methane thing, and we'll measure it and we'll feed them this stuff and we'll see what happens. So to date, I don't think that research has been done, but it's the research that they would like to do. And in my crazy imagination would be, imagine, like, we've got like 2 billion cows on the planet. Even if a proportion of those cows, if it works and it's fed to the cows and they eat it and it reduces their methane output, you would have a reduction in a greenhouse gas, which would help to change our planet. So on a small scale, when you go shopping, make sure you don't buy stuff with palm oil in it. If it says vegetable oil, you can't be sure. On a bigger scale of things, this book can also help kids to think about, what can you do to change things in the world? Science is really important. And this particular science, this bacillus science, may well crack that open. It's like, I know they're working hard on the seaweed to feed it to the cows to reduce their methane output. Well, this is a scoop for you guys. You're the first ones that have chased me up and asked the question. So what I'm saying is that if the bacillus can be applied to hay and it reduces the methane output from cows, how good would that be?
Wow, that's amazing. I'm so grateful to have met you and hear this story. And I know you have many more layers, and I can't delve into them today, but I will be delving into them in the future. Sure.
It's a great pleasure to share that. And, if I can make people happy and if I can help kids to read or be passionate about their reading, or even better, be passionate about writing stuff, if they look at the book and they go, I can do something like that, or even get the idea in their mind that they can become a scientist. Like, everyone's got that capability. If they really want to go down that track, they can make a difference. And then on the other side of things, when they go shopping, they just say, hey, Mum, don't buy those. They've got palm oil in them. Buy these. These are palm oil free. So in many ways, they can make a difference. So, but, it's all for the fun of it all and just having a better future for everyone, I guess.
Thank you so much for
You're
sharing.
welcome.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, get on to Mud Poo and the Secret of the Rainforest. Get on to Captain Pete and get a book and change the world one book at a time.
One book at a time. And I love visiting schools and just chatting to people about how, we can do that. So thanks very much for having me, Mel. It's appreciated.
Thanks, Pete. Today's episode of Sounds Like Us was hosted by Melanie Naismith and produced by Joshua Liston. Sounds Like Us was made possible by working for Victoria and Taong Shire Council. For more information on Sounds Like Us and to hear more episodes from local creatives, go to taong.vic.gov.au.